Ladies, gentlemen, and tarnished of all ages, when it comes to the things that make Elden Ring special, one of the main ones is the exploration. The hidden or harder to reach areas that reward you for getting there, whether it be with an item or with a fight, or sometimes you get both. Today we're going to talk about a nice big collection of optional, mostly missable bosses located around the map of the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC expansion, mostly sticking to ones that easily go unfound if you aren't careful to actually look everywhere, and oftentimes also giving you something cool as a reward too, with the slight caveat that we are going to count things like mini-bosses on occasion in this, as long as they have either a unique fight to them or a unique reward. That said, I will be going through this in a sort of game progression order. The later it is in the video, the further it is from the first grace of the DLC, and for each entry I'll show you where the boss is located and then give you an opportunity to skip to the next entry before actually showing you the boss itself, if you just, want to go to the places that I tell you to and then experience what's actually there yourself. First up then today is in Bellarat Tower, the first legacy dungeon, but a special side of Bellarat that requires both a key and finding the door that the key opens. The key itself from the small private altar, Site of Grace, is a short run forwards up the stairs and past the Horned Warrior. A couple of turns like so puts you in a bit of an alleyway, follow it around here and then past the sewer outflow to find this little door, behind which is a ladder that you can climb up. At the top of the ladder, turn left out of the door and then take another tight left to jump onto the roof of this building, then follow it around one more left to jump into this little bridge here. From here there's a little archway right in front of you and you'll find the Well-Depth's key in this room. I already have mine or else you'd see it right here. Once you have the key then you need to go to the door that it actually opened, so from the main Bellarat Tower settlement, Site of Grace, just head forwards past the gate, take a right and go up the short staircase, take another right and you should see a well in the corner over here. Go down the ladder, down into the well then, and then at the bottom of it you will find a locked door that can be opened with the key we just picked up. Behind this is a sort of large open area, a sort of bonus poison swamp, but if you stick to the left wall through the actual poison swamp itself, you'll come across our boss eventually. Skip to the time on screen then to avoid knowing what it actually is, otherwise it's going to be a juvenile tree spirit mini-boss. This is a pretty standard base game enemy moveset, but with poison added in, of course, because you're in a swamp, and when you kill it, you get a new talisman for your efforts, the Immunizing Horn +2 for, well, boosted status resistances. Second then, this one is located in the Fog Rift Fort. You get to hear from the Shadow Altus region by walking over to the Shadow Altus west side of Grace. The path to this Grace is quite simply just walking over here from the nearby one, but past this it involves a lot of dropping down, so I'll just show you the path properly so you don't fall off of the wrong place and feel the sweet pain of gravitational doom. Directly across this bridge then is the boss of the fort, so skip to the time on screen if you want to find this for yourself. Otherwise, the boss here is just an advanced version of the Black Knight enemies, with like a frog tongue pulling spell that is honestly really cool, and I wish that I could actually use myself. That said, you did hear me right, this is the Knight boss of the Fog Rift Fort, the Fog Rift Fortnite.
Number 1 victory royale, yeah, Fortnite, we bout to get down.
On death then, he drops the classic Black Knight Great Shield, an absolutely beautiful shield from the DLC, with reasonably good stats, more though about the aesthetic for sure more than anything else. Third up is going to be directly south of the Moorth Ruins, Site of Grace, just sort of fighting in the open. No complex path here to get to this, so immediately just skip to the next entry if you don't want to actually see it, but the boss here is just one of the ghostflame dragons, this specific one fighting a load of Messmer soldiers out in the open, and while the enemy itself may not be overly special, the encounter is interesting in the way that it plays out, and it leads you to an area that you may not have been unless you entered this region through the shortcut to begin with. And it's worth mentioning, right near this boss is also a spirit spring that leads to a Miquella Cross and Site of Grace that a large number of players just straight up miss because it's off the beaten path. That said, the boss itself simply drops a pile of runes, a dragon heart, and a somber ancient dragon smithing stone. And if you want any help actually killing the thing, these things are actually insanely weak to holy damage, provided that you're at least somewhat built to use the weapon that you actually use to apply the holy damage. Fourth today we have a boss in a somewhat confusing to reach location, which is Charo's Hidden Grave. The actual path here here, once you know it, is actually quite simple, but from the Dragon's Pit Cave, there is a back exit, the Dragon Pit Terminus. You simply head from here south to the Grand Communion altar down at the bottom, then you have to climb over the corpse of the dead dragon to then drop down into this new region, Charo's Hidden Grave, the only way to actually reach this. From the grace here that is on your map then, simply walk forward about 20 feet into the open and the boss will spawn, but the region itself is just a bit hard to find in the first place, so I thought this was a fair one to mention. Skip to the time on screen then to save the boss for yourself. Otherwise, this one is an expansion unique version of the deathrite bird bosses from the main game, having an even larger moveset than the consecrated snowfield's deathrite bird. For comparison, on death, the reward that you actually get from this is just a straight up Ash of War version of ghostflame call, the unique weapon skill from Death's Poker, now no longer quite so unique, as you can apply it to pretty much any weapon that has a point on the end of it, which makes it a hell of a lot more versatile than it once was. Fifth then is another boss in Charo's Hidden Grave, but this one is a touch more hidden, specifically in the Lamentor's Jail area, which is northwest of the previous Site of Grace, along the sort of cliff's edge that a lot of people just sort of wander by without noticing. That said, the path in here to the boss is somewhat long, so I'll just let that properly play out, with a timestamp on screen to skip to the next section as we get near the actual fog wall itself too. For those who wanted to stay to see the boss then, it is in fact the Lamentor himself. Not a difficult boss fight, but definitely a bit of a unique one, and the reward for killing him is awesome, really. It is the Lamentor's Mask. This functions as an unlimited use transformation item tool. It only works when you are naked, but it turns you into a Lamentor, which increases your arcane stat, among other things, and if you use the item while already in this form, your head will grow violently, which counts as a sort of headbutt attack to enemies in front of you, which is honestly just hilarious, more than it is anything else. Sixth up then is an impossible boss to not see really, but one that I bet a bunch of people just sort of walked by. The actual location is just along the main path through the jagged peak, and the boss itself is about a 10-second walk from this Site of Grace here, so skip to the time on screen if you just want to experience it for yourself. For the rest of you, the boss that I'm talking about is this second Jagged Peak Drake boss. There is one of these unnamed Jagged Peak Drakes earlier as you enter the region that drops pretty much nothing of real proper value, and so knowing how a lot of people play these games, I bet a number of you, not all of you sure, but at least a decent portion. Probably killed the first drake, saw that it didn't really give you anything you cared about, then saw another unnamed drake directly past it, and probably just ran around it without a care in the world. Well, while the actual rewards themselves for this drake dying are honestly minimal, what this unlocks is the continuation of a quest for a fellow named Egon, who, let's just say, curse you, Bale! I hereby vow you will rule this day! So, you know, if you missed this NPC's whole shtick the first time that you went through this area, absolutely make a point of not doing that in future playthroughs. 7th today is going to be in a slightly harder spot to reach, all the way up in the northeast section of the map up here by the Fingerstone Hill Site of Grace. If you haven't been to this part of the map, you can see a more full route in our sorcery questline guide video on the channel. Through here, there are actually a couple of other bonus bosses that you will recognize from the first game on your way over to the Site of Grace itself. That said, from the Grace just immediately northeast in this crater on the map is your boss. Skip to the next entry if you don't want to know yet. Otherwise, this one is just a new fallingstar beast, a returning base game boss with a slightly adjusted moveset. Nothing overly crazy, he's definitely a tanky little guy, but he's not too bad. Kill him and the reward that you get is a new gravity sorcery, gravitational missile. If you quick cast this, it just fires an explosion forward. If you charge it, it will actually pulse beside your target a few times for pretty low damage before it explodes. But you can also aim this one straight down at the floor under you to make even the charged version of it explode instantly when it actually hits the ground. 8th up today, then, we're going to talk about an optional, incredibly missable, full-on remembrance boss for the DLC. And this one is directly related to the sorcery questline of the expansion. If you've done the questline, you know the boss, but for those who haven't, the first step is to go to the Cathedral of Mantis Mater in the eastern side of the Shadow Altus region and talk to Count Emir inside of the sort of the throne of this area. He will give you an item and a map, and he wants you to go to the southern Finger Runes of Rhea location right here on your map there, head to the middle of this area where all the fingers are actually pointing, and try finger blowhole. After engaging in some sounding, return to the cathedral and talk to Emir again, and he'll give you a new map. This one pointing to the finger runes in the northeast side of the map, which are right beside the Site of Grace from our last entry, actually. Repeat the process here and head to the center where the fingers are pointing, shove your face inside of the hole, then go back to Emir once again, and he will give you even more rewards and a third map. Exhaust his dialogue and talk to the Knight of Night that is also within the room with him. Then you want to reload the area by sitting at a Site of Grace nearby, run up to the throne itself, and interact with it to reveal a hidden ladder. Climb down here and you'll be met with an invasion, and importantly, if you don't want to miss anything after defeating the invader, you should actually go back and speak with the Knight again in the cathedral itself before proceeding down here some more, because back down in the pit is another giant finger with a hole that you can blow into, and this time, when you do so, it will bring you to the boss itself. Skip to the time on screen for the final entry if you want to preserve this surprise for yourself. Otherwise, the boss is Mater, the mother of fingers, and she is just an absolutely incredible boss. A pushover to some builds, sure, a nightmare to others, but an absolute spectacle of a fight that is without a doubt just worth the experience if nothing else. Once you defeat her, you get a ton of bonus rewards just as a continuation of the questline itself when you go back to the cathedral, but her own personal reward is just a remembrance that you can then trade in for an intelligence and faith mixed scaling staff that functions as a casting catalyst for both sorceries and incantations at the same time, which is honestly really neat conceptually. But then there's also the Gazing Finger colossal weapon that is literally just the boss's head on a stick, and it is one of my favorite personal new weapons. It has a unique skill that forces the head to bow down on the ground, which then causes it to make a magical explosion in anger of the disrespect that you're showing it, and it has a unique strong attack moveset where you essentially force the head to bow right into your enemy's face, and it has weirdly high poise on this attack, and honestly extremely good stagger and damage, all things considered, which makes it weirdly uniquely strong compared to what you might think. Then our final boss of the day is going to be the Ancient Ruins region, accessed after the Shadow Keep on the western side. Specifically, while there is a closer grace to this, the path itself technically starts at the Ancient Rua Ruins west Site of Grace, and for full clarity, I'll just let this full path play out until we at least get closer to the boss. building then, in the back, is where the boss itself is. And this is the last entry, so I'll bid you adieu for now if you want to actually keep the surprise for your own experience. For the rest of you then, the boss in here is actually a repeat of the Divine Beast Dancing Lion, the first Remembrance boss, locationally speaking, and this one, though, this version of it specifically has a Death Blight phase that it goes into relatively early, which can, of course, actually be devastating if you aren't careful or prepared. But otherwise, this functions just a lot like the original Divine Lion boss, aside from having way more health and damage. When you kill it, then the reward that you get is actually a brand new incantation, Divine Beast Tornado, which does exactly what it says on the tin, letting you fire a goddamn tornado as an incantation. This also can be charged and is boosted by the various storm damage increases that are part of the expansion, so it definitely does have at least some level of potential. That just about does it for today then, everyone. Just a collection of optional bosses in the DLC, where to find them, what they are, and what you get for killing them. Hopefully you've enjoyed this and hopefully I've helped you find at least a couple of bosses you may not have been aware of beforehand. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.